Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we are discussing the latest production Rolex Oysterquartz Datejust I have ever encountered. Oysterquartz Datejust or Day-Date. This is the latest Oysterquartz I have ever seen. What do I mean by that? I mean it is a P serial number which corresponds to the year 2000, and the bracelet has an AB code which also corresponds to 2000, which was within 12 months of the phase out of the model. As a result, this watch seems more like a new watch than the typical Oysterquartz we see from the 70s and the 80s. This is a very different animal, a holdover from an era when the Gerald Genta integrated bracelet design ethic ruled the world, and Rolex was pushing the boundaries of technological innovation with its in-house quartz calibers. We'll talk about all of that in a moment. This is white gold and steel, Oysterquartz reference 17014, Datejust, of course. The watch features a white gold bezel and a steel case, and they're both in spectacular condition. Throwing it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see that the watch borrows heavily from the design of the Rolex Texan, the 5100 from 1970. And that watch, allegedly designed by Gerald Genta, lived on in the design of a handful of integrated bracelet mechanical watches, and then more notably the Oysterquartz series, and that's what we have right here. So this is from the era of the Laureatos, the Royal Oaks, the Nautilus, the Jumbo Ingenieur, and the 222, and even from the same hand that designed a lot of those watches. Now, the timepiece wears easily on my wrist, as the watch is 36 millimeters in diameter, 12.5 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, the case is 42.5 millimeters, and then we have the end links, which expand a little bit more to 47.5 millimeters. So the total rigid distance across the wrist is 47.5. I can recommend this watch for wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. The bracelet is in otherworldly condition. Most of these I see are 3, even 4 decades old. Take a look at that transitional bevel on the edge of the links. It is wonderfully sharp. You can see the outer faces are polished, the tops are satinated, then you have that bevel running all the way down. Now, this is a different generation of Rolex bracelet design. As a result, you can see, if you look carefully, that the center links are hollow, so it has a little bit of that inherent Rolex rattle that you find on older bracelets, not due to wear, not due to aging, not due to loss of tolerance, just because that's how it left Geneva when it was new. Removable links are fixed by screws. Again, we have the clasp, which is beautifully preserved. You can see just how well defined that 5-point coronet is. From any angle, it remains deep and sharp. The clasp still has a tight snappiness to its tolerance that speaks to its level of preservation. You can see the codes inside, the reference as well as the year stamp, the AB giving you the year 2000. There are several divot pairs inside of the clasp, so you can use your strap tool to move the spring bar, re-anchor the bracelet, and fine-tune the size. And you can see just how well preserved this watch is. It still has the original caseback sticker with the original number. That's the reference of the watch, 17014, which means you're looking at a steel Oysterquartz Datejust family with a white gold bezel. That's what the 4 means. The 4 means a white gold bezel on a steel case. You can see that the original note of stainless steel Rolex design, the reference number, and the serial number are razor sharp on the reverse side of the case. Because this watch featured a fully integrated bracelet, all of those features, the reference and the serial numbers, underneath the lugs rather than between the lugs on a standard Rolex. You can see that the lugs are perfectly integrated into the bracelet, which tapers as you move away from the case. The flanks are polished, the hoods are satinated, and the bevels are still in good shape. The watch has been refinished at some point. It's not completely version steel, but then again, to say it has been refinished means I can see it having been refinished maybe once, whereas most of these have been worn and worn out over decades. We have a crown, which is a twin lock in steel. That's what that little slash means. When this watch was new, 100 meters water resistant. The bezel is otherworldly. You can see how sharp it is. This is usually the component that wears out the fastest, but on this watch you can see all of those fluted facets are still razor sharp and beautifully defined. And we have a sapphire crystal with a sapphire Cyclops eye magnifier. Now, the interesting thing here is it's one of the only Oyster Quartz watches you will ever encounter that came with a luminova dial from the factory. Almost all of them are tritium, and if you see one of these from the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s with a luminova dial, that means replacement dial and hands. Here, the original dial and hands, which are still equipped, feature super luminova, which means it still glows, and it is still correct that it still glows. The dial is metallic blue sunburst. We have applique white gold crown, white gold hands, white gold indices, and the watch features all the functions and refinements you'd expect on a standard Datejust. It has hacking seconds, and it has a quick set date, so you can rapidly cycle the date. And by the way, the date has a wonderfully serify font. Now, the watch is powered by unconventional means. The Oyster Quartz calibers were the most advanced serial production quartz movements in the world back in the late 70s. And this one uses caliber 5035, which was the Datejust version of the Oyster Quartz. So it is battery powered. It has a 2 to 3 year power reserve. It has the quick set. It has the stop seconds. It is a COSC certified quartz chronometer, a rarely earned accolade for which very few watches have ever been submitted. It has a lever escapement. Like a conventional mechanical watch, it uses a Swiss lever and an escape wheel to perfectly index and lock the seconds hand once per second. So when you listen to this watch, it has a very distinct heartbeat, exactly like a 1 hertz beat, with a loud click and a clack as it locks and unlocks. So it is a 1 hertz lever escapement as though it were mechanical. It also has 11 jewels. It is a watchmaker serviced and watchmaker adjusted movement. It is designed to last not just the life of the owner, but the multi-century potential lifespan of the watch. And pursuant to that, it features a quartz trimmer, which allows the watchmaker to adjust for the aging of the quartz crystal and the drift that occurs over decades. It is also thermocompensated, which means in very hot and very cold conditions, when even extremely accurate quartz watches can begin to lose or gain time, this watch, thanks to a secondary quartz circuit that acts as a sanity check on the primary, this watch is thermocompensated and able to adjust for extreme temperatures without deviation. How accurate were these? Well, they were extremely precise. While a conventional quartz will gain or lose 15 seconds per month, these were said to gain or lose generally only around 2 to 5 seconds per month, making them extraordinarily accurate even by the standards of quartz watches. And they're rare, as only about 25,000 Oyster Quartz models, both Datedate and Datejust, were manufactured from roughly 1977 to 2001. This one was at the end of the line. So with 25,000 made over a quarter century, you can tell that this is one of the few Rolex watches that defies the company's reputation for massive mass production. This is genuinely scarce, and this late in production, in this condition, this might be one of a kind. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.